Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I'm going to read a comment to you guys, and then I'm going to answer the question that I received. I am loving doing these videos, you guys, talking about recovery and addiction. And I was just telling a friend of mine today, I was like, I just love these videos so much. I know this channel doesn't have a huge following. I don't care. If there were only 20 people or 5 people that were watching each video, that would be enough for me to keep going. Like, I just love talking about this. Like I say at the beginning of most of these videos, I'm just sharing my experience, strength, and hope. I am no expert when it comes to anything to do with addiction and recovery. I am no representative of any 12-step program. I'm just sharing my experience, strength, and hope as I have lived it through my life. So I want to make that very, very clear. I don't want anybody to go out there and be like, well, Peter said this, and Peter said, you know what I mean? If you take what I say and it means something to you, or you relate to it in some kind of way, or whatever, hey, I really appreciate that. But I'm not the end all. There are other people out there, that have, things to say too. Like if you're in a 12-step program, listen to your sponsor, listen to other people that are in your support network. If you're in therapy, listen to your therapist, listen to your counselor. Just because you hear a guy in a YouTube video does not mean that you should do what I say, okay? I just think that maybe I'm a little, food for thought. So anyway, all right. I want to share this comment. It's a rather long comment, and it says, it's from Katie, and Katie said, "Hey Peter, I could really use some help. Tonight at my meeting, I realized that a friendship I was in was very toxic to me, and I wouldn't have said her name except for that she has her name in the comment. Okay. Throughout the entire friendship, I felt like it was a big high I was on." Oh, wait. "Hey Peter, I could really use some help. Tonight at my meeting, I realized that a friendship I was in was very toxic to me and that I was codependent on it. Throughout the entire friendship, I felt like it was a big high I was on. The whole entire relationship felt like a drug, and I'm ashamed in how I acted when we fell apart. I really do care about these two people. They're married, and I know I owe them an amends for how I acted. I'm really hurt that I was ghosted by one of them, and I feel ashamed that I made a situation about me instead of using the steps and being there for them. I'm extremely ashamed, guilty, and embarrassed of how I've acted. I've been talking with the other one for about a month now, and we were able to make some things work. I told her how I felt, she told me how she felt, and we've since been talking a lot, but setting boundaries, and it's been going very well. My question to you is, have you ever had a relationship, any kind, in sobriety that felt like it was a high? Were you codependent on it and it felt so good that you didn't want it to end and couldn't imagine your life without it? If so, how did you heal from it? I don't want to depend on anything that makes me feel like it's an escape or like a high drunk, and I cannot believe that after 5 years of sobriety, I didn't realize that the whole relationship felt like a drug to me. What do I do?" Well, I think your answer is right there. First of all, I'd say, whenever we become so dependent on people in our lives that we can't even imagine our lives without it, that's not a healthy relationship. It just isn't. When we talk about having healthy, especially when that's not I think a romantic partner, a child, a parent, things like that, but it's an exterior outside, person in our lives, like a friend or whatever. I don't know. I think it's interesting when we talk about these words of I feel so high, I feel so good, and yet I feel ashamed, embarrassed, guilty, whatever. It's interesting because those are words that go along with, I think, the downfall. When I would use, let's say if I went out and I just had a banger of a night, right? Which was most nights towards, I would say, the last 2 years. But let's just say if I went out and I had an crazy night, okay? At the time that I was doing it, it wasn't like I was filled with regret, guilt, and remorse, I felt pretty good in that moment. I was riding high. That's where they say, when we come into the program, they'll say, there was no giggle left in the bottle. Even as bad as my life looked, and it looked pretty bad, I would say there were some nights there was still some giggle left in the bottle. The next morning, there was no giggle left in the bottle. But that night, there was still some giggle left in the bottle. But, the next morning, what would happen is I would wake up, and I would feel incredibly ashamed, and I would feel incredibly guilty, And I would feel extremely embarrassed or incredibly embarrassed for what I had done and the way that I had acted. And just kind of like, oh, woe is me, right? So if you're 5 years sober and you're repeating the same behaviors, you know, I can remember talking to my sponsor, this is like 15 years ago, and I was in this very unhealthy relationship. At the time, it was unhealthy. And I said something to my sponsor about it, and he said, I guess I just don't understand what you got sober for. And I said, what do you mean? And he was like, well, why did you get sober to act out like you're still in active addiction in this relationship? And I was like, it pissed me off, to be completely honest with you. Like, it really pissed me off. Because I was like, at that time, I was like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to, maybe it was 16 or 17 years ago. I was like, I'm going to meetings, you know, I'm talking to you, I'm working steps, I'm doing things I need to be doing. And yet, you're still telling me that I'm just as bad as I was in active addiction, because I was really looking for pats on the back. I don't look for pats on the back today. I stay sober for me today, not for anybody else. I don't need that validation for anybody else. I stay sober for myself today. I don't think I did that for a very long time. There were many, many years that I stayed sober for other people around me so that I didn't affect them negatively, and also so they'd be like, oh, you're doing so well, congratulations, you know? But when he said that to me, it really upset me. I was like, what do you mean I'm acting like an addict? And he goes, well, you're still dependent on this relationship, and this relationship is like not healthy for you. You're telling me it's not healthy for you. You're telling me that you are acting out, you know, the same way that you acted out when you used, and yet you're insistent at any expense to save this relationship. You know, if this were a drug or if this were a drink, you know, I would tell you to get rid of it. I would tell you to flush it down the toilet. I would tell you it's not healthy, that, you know, whatever. Well, with people, that's different. With relationships, that's different. And I think, I'm just going to tell you what I hear. Okay, I could be completely wrong, but what I hear is your need to work this relationship out at any expense, instead of saying it's probably healthier for me to make amends to these people and to take a look at what my part was in this relationship and why it was toxic, and to work on myself, and then maybe like cut ties and say, this is where it ends, you know, and maybe we meet down the road again, but for right now, this is not healthy. This is not what we need. And, you know, because for me, whenever I'm able to identify a toxic relationship, I don't have toxic relationships in my life today. I just don't. I don't have them in my life because I don't want them in my life. I don't want what comes along with that, which is remorse, shame, embarrassment, you know, all guilt. Like, those are all of the feelings that come with toxicity. When you talk about a toxic relationship, you're talking about toxicity. Toxicity is like something eroding your body from the inside out, eroding your brain from the inside out. And if that's a relationship, let's go. What are we doing? So my first suggestion would be sit down and talk to your sponsor and do some inventory, you know, on maybe why you're really needing to keep these people in your life and what your part is in that, you know, and hey, you can make amends to people and they don't have to stay in your life. You know, it's like, I always talk about the part from The Hills when, you know, Heidi Montag sits down there and makes, you know, she makes amends, kind of, when I call it that, to Lauren Conrad. And Lauren Conrad says to her, you know, like, she says, can you ever forgive me? And Lauren says, I can forgive you, but now I want to forget you. And we don't have to be that nasty about it, but I do think that there are people in our lives that, you know, I'm such a believer that people come into our lives for, you know, a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it was really hard for me to kind of wrap my head around that and realize that I have a lot of reason people in my life. I've had a lot of season people in my life, and I have just a few lifetime people in my life. And I'm okay with that today. I'm really, really okay with that today. As long as I don't have the toxicity in my life, but I have the peace and the serenity, because the peace and the serenity is so, so, so important. So I wish you all the best. I think the answer is in your question if you really took that to your sponsor and looked at it. You can do this. You can do this, and you can have that peace and serenity too. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.